question is, can an owner or neighbor request an investigation of an at-risk vessel that has not yet been cited or designated at risk? Yes. I mean, anybody can call us and report an at-risk vessel or a derelict vessel, and an officer will be assigned to investigate that. A lot of these happen out on the water when officers are on water patrol and they see these indications, and then they meet with the vessel owners and follow through with the at-risk. But if somebody were to call us and say there's an at-risk vessel next to their house and they want some action taken on it, we would have to respond. So I hope that answers that question. If I don't answer your question that you've asked correctly and you need some more clarification, just raise your hand, let me know. Why were some VTIPs declined? Excellent question. Pebbles went over the eligibility requirements. The vessel has to be titled to the owner who made the application to have the vessel removed. So if I don't like his vessel, I can't, and I'm his next door neighbor, I can't apply to have his vessel removed. So we have some people that want to remove their vessel and they have not received clear title to that vessel. So that would be denied. Other vessels are, we find many of the applications we receive are also in the middle of a derelict vessel investigation. And the applicant is trying to subvert the derelict vessel investigation by trying to submit a VTIP application to have it removed. So we go through each application and we vet all of these things to make sure the vessel is eligible. And if it's eligible, then we take step 2 by getting them to cancel their title or junk their title, and then we can move forward with the removal under the VTIP program. But reviewing some of the applications, we find that the vessel or the person applying is not eligible, and that would be a decline. If they can make it eligible after that, then we can move forward again.
I would add too that sometimes it takes up to 9 days before a contract is, so we've got to post and advertise it. Within 9 days, the person can turn into a derelict, and then start another process.
So with that, what Captain Clark just said is, if we have already accepted a vessel into the VTIP program, in our guidelines, it requires that the owner of the vessel keep that vessel floating. And we have had pretty good compliance with that. But technically, we can go outside of that. And if we've already approved it and for some unforeseen circumstances or no intentional effort to abandon that vessel from the VTIP program, we'll continue to remove it as a VTIP vessel, even if it sinks. So we're trying not to make the process any more difficult, and we're trying to make this as expedient as possible so that these vessels get removed from the water. We could technically say, sorry, you let it sink, and now it's no longer in the VTIP program. It's now going to be a derelict vessel, and you're going to be charged for it. It's a case-by-case basis based on the totality of the circumstances around that. But normally, if it's been accepted already into the VTIP program and it was completely eligible, we'll have our contractor do the extra work to get that thing out of there. Good question. What's the difference between the rapid grant and the bulk grant application? I'll be very blunt and honest with you. It's the method of payment and the process for the contract preparation. If a vessel is an imminent threat to the public or the environment, then we can classify it as a rapid removal. That is an emergency removal. So a lot of people, they end up just doing nothing but submitting rapid removals, and they'll end up getting all of those rapid removals declined. But if it's truly an imminent danger to the public or it's an environmental threat, what we can do is we can subvert the contract process that usually takes about 3 to 4 weeks to go through before it can get sent to the county for authorization. And based on the totality of the circumstances, we can order a PO to be issued. And once the PO is issued, then the county can move forward with their contractor to remove it. So it's still a grant. It's still being paid out of our grant funding, but we're using a purchase order instead of a grant contract for the payment of that removal. So that's the only difference between a rapid removal and a bulk removal. Everything else, we have to stay consistent with statute.
So if a vessel's already sunk. Gonna be bulk.
That doesn't that's not necessarily true. It depends whether it's an imminent threat to the public or an immediate danger to the environment. If it's sunk and it's not leaking any fuels or oils, and it can sit there for 3 months, it's much more cost efficient for the state to put groups of vessels together for removal instead of doing one individual vessel each time. And the reason is for FWC's contractors, every time we have them go out on a project, they get a mobilization and a demobilization fee, sometimes as much as 50,000 per project. So if we're sending them out to remove 10 vessels and they're getting a $50,000 mobilization fee, that's much more cost effective than having them go out and get one vessel and have a $50,000 mobilization fee. So we have to be good stewards of the taxpayer money as well as try to get these things out as fast as possible. So that based on the totality of the circumstances for a rapid removal request, we have to review it and determine whether it meets the definition of a rapid removal. And that would come a lot of times from the officer having in their narrative that this is an imminent threat to the public. Recycling on DVs. We are very intent on doing this. Of course, it's part of the core mission of FWC to be environmentally sound. We want to remove and recycle as much material as possible, but we're not in the parts business and we're not in the boat business. A lot of people have said, can't you just collect all these boats somewhere and then take all the fiberglass and recycle that and take all the aluminum and recycle that? Most county landfills where these vessels are taken have their own recycling programs, and they will take that material from the vessel and recycle it. There have been a few private companies throughout Florida. One is in Orlando. I think it's called Green World. And there's another couple that are proposing taking vessels and using the fiberglass, shredding it, and using that as part of the mix of things that they make artificial fuel for power plants with. And then they sell these little ice cube sized particles, which must contain 11% wood. They can contain up to 27% fiberglass. They can contain different elements that they can collect, trash, and put together to make a cube of fuel, which acts like a piece of coal. The problem is, if a vessel has to be removed from the city of Pensacola, and it's going to cost $10,000 to remove it, and the recycling plant that's going to take that fiberglass is in Orlando, there has to be somebody that's paying for and logisticizing the transportation and the preparation of that material to go from Pensacola to Orlando. So there have been a lot of conversations in groups within the environmental community trying to discuss this issue and see how this could work out, where it's not going to cost the taxpayer twice as much to remove and dispose of this vessel, including all of the environmental recycling. And we don't want to fill landfills with boats either, but there is a cost associated with it. So there's got to be a lot of determination on as to whether that cost is worth it, or if we're just going to continue taking them to the landfill. In the nature of expediency right now, getting these things off of the water and eliminating the dangers thereof, they're going to landfills most of the time. But a lot of those landfills, like I said, are also collecting recyclable material, and then they sell that material to these other companies that do what they need to do with it. Did that answer that recycling question? Yeah, it's something that we're very interested in, but of course, the safety issue of getting these out as quickly as possible right now is the main concern. Is there a condition that would cause a vessel to be removed from the water immediately, such as oil, fuel, sewage leak, etc.? Yes. We have the authority to authorize the immediate removal of a vessel from the water. That doesn't mean that it's going to be destroyed and disposed of immediately. If we find out that 7 hours ago a vessel capsized and it's spewing fuel all over the water, we can figure a way to get that vessel off of the water and store it on land while our officers conduct the derelict vessel investigation on that vessel and hold the owner accountable for that incident occurring on the water. Just so everybody's aware, when a vessel is derelict upon the waters of the state, a criminal act has occurred, and that is for that moment. But that moment continues indefinitely as long as that water is on, that vessel is on the water. So it's a continuous crime in progress. Just by removing that vessel from the water doesn't mean it's no longer a derelict. It's still a derelict, a part of the derelict vessel case that's being investigated. So it can be removed, stored, and then removed after the due process or destroyed after the due process has been completed. The problem is, how do you pay for that? We can't have our patrol boats hook up to a 45-foot Chris craft and drag it to a boat ramp and pull it out on a trailer. This is going to require somebody removing that vessel from the water and getting it on land stored, and that's going to incur a cost. Those costs can't be incurred on a grant contract until the grant has been executed, or they can't be incurred until the PO in a rapid removal has been executed and issued. So can the county pay local funding to have that vessel removed and stored while our agency or a local agency goes through the investigative process required by statute and the Constitution on that vessel? Yes. Can our local area funding be used for that? In certain circumstances, yes, but we also have to put fuel in patrol boats. We have to do lots of other things with that money. So again, it's a case by case, situation by situation analysis to see what can be done as quickly as possible. We've been working with the Coast Guard for years. The Coast Guard's federal pollution activity authorizes them to go to a vessel, raise it off the bottom, remove all of the fuels and contaminants on the vessel, and then drop it right back where it was, because they don't have a mandate to remove the vessel. Any vessel that's removed by the Coast Guard has to go through the commandant in Washington, D.C. So it's a very complicated process for them to do that. Then we have to have our contractor go back out and raise the vessel again and then remove it from the water. So we've been working with the Coast Guard over the years. So let's coordinate efforts at the time of removal. And if you've got it, your contractor, and they've got it up already, then maybe our contractor can meet your contractor and we can proceed with the process through removing it from the water while it's up. So these are things that we've been working on. These are handshake relationships that are very effective. This is an extreme amount of teamwork involved in these derelict vessels. Again, we've got 780 or 900. I don't know on a daily basis how many officers we have, but these guys are very dedicated and work extremely hard trying to make sure these vessels get everything done necessarily to get that vessel removed from the water in the most expedient way possible. And we want to continue that effort in the removal process. But as Captain Clark was mentioning, it's not just a let's go grab it. There's processes for getting a grant contract ready to execute is about 2 to 3 weeks. The application has to be reviewed when it comes in. That's 3 or 4 days. Then it goes through the routing process after the paperwork's been completed. That's 2 to 3 weeks. Then it goes back to the county for signature. Sometimes when the county gets it back, they have to put it on the next agenda board meeting for their county commission. Some places sign off on it immediately. So that could be another 3 days. It could be a month. Then it comes back to FWC for execution after it's been signed by the county. That usually takes about within 72 hours, we can get a contract executed. Once it's been executed, it goes back to the county and the county can get their contractor to begin the project. But maybe the contractor has a 45-day time limit to get the contract done, and they're going to wait until the last week to start. So you can see there's time elements built into this whole process. If it's an FWC direct removal, once we've authorized the removal, then we have to get a purchase order issued. The purchase order is a much different process in that case, and we have to go through a bit of work to get the purchase order. First, we have to ask all of the contractors that are eligible to remove that project, whether they want it or not, and what they're going to charge. We have to give them a period of time. They submit all of their paperwork to us with bids. Then we review all those bids to make sure they're legal and they're competent. Then, once we've made our decision on who the contractor is going to be out of those received bids, then we seek a PO. Once that PO has been issued, then we give it to the contractor with a contract to start the project. Folks, this takes time. This is not something where 3 days or 4 days or even a week or two after a vessel has become derelict, that vessel can get immediately removed under normal circumstances. It takes time to put all of these into effect so that all the money can be secured, all the contracts are done legally, there's state purchasing involved. Legal has to review these things, but we do try to move it along as quickly as possible. Is there a condition that would cause a vessel to be removed? Well, from the water immediately, we just covered that one. So what should county law enforcement do to ensure consistency with FWC derelict vessel assessments and DV at-risk citations? So we can share how we do our process with any law enforcement agency. I am more than willing to teach that law enforcement agency and the marine officers within that agency how to do a derelict vessel investigation and what is going to be required for us to have when we're going to consider state funding to remove those vessels. And I can set up a Teams meeting with all of the officers involved and show them what I train our officers to do on how to perform this process properly. We have a great case going in one jurisdiction. The officer, well, I'll just say officer that did this case did a great job on everything, but they left out a part that was required by statute. And I think it was just, they were using old school rules instead of new school rules. And we have to remember that these laws change every year. We have to stay updated on this stuff. So even though the officer's intent is great and the process with which he used up to the point of missing this one function is missing, it's a 21-day fix. And once that's been completed, then we can move forward. So we also require that any case that the state is going to fund has to be in our derelict vessel database. That used to be as easy as my old database. There was a SQL Server database for FWC. I could put people in, take them out. I could do all that stuff myself and manage a lot of it myself. We've now coordinated with Smart Cop, which is a national law enforcement software company that is managing our new DV database within Mobile Forms, which is a program our officers use for everything. And since we are the primary user of this functionality, that's why this was done. We are now offering that software to outside agencies, to sheriff's departments and municipal police departments, free of charge. But it's a little pain in the rear end trying to get it set up, or at first. They have to send us a letter of request. We send them instructions on how to fill it out. Then Smart Cop gets with them and installs the software at their location. If their IT is okay with other software being put in, then they fill out a user agreement. Then they get an account. Then they can log in and start doing the derelict vessel entry work. So that's a little complicated, but once they're in, and their information will be in the database, and they can move forward with submitting their cases on grant applications and direct removals for FWC state funding. So that's the actual question was, how do we provide consistency? It's allow us to train you how we do it. And then you use basically the same format that we use. And that way, you've done everything that you're supposed to do. These officers have been trained thoroughly, and they know what liabilities exist in this work. And they don't want to expose our agency or the derelict vessel program or themselves to being called out on for liability. And let me tell you, and I'm not trying to drag this out, but it used to be if a law enforcement agency or governmental entity made a mistake, they used to pay to have a new boat purchased for that person. That's the way it used to work. It doesn't work like that anymore. If there's a violation of constitutional rights, a pro bono attorney will assist that person filing a class action lawsuit against FWC and everyone else, and this happened in Miami in 2017. And the officer that was involved in that could have lost their career, their future wages, all sorts of stuff. So it's much bigger than just buying a boat for somebody. So now the thing is, we want to make sure that we offer the owner of that vessel or that title instrument their due process, as they should have. And once we go through that process, then we can move forward with the removal and disposal of the vessel. But we want to make sure that our customers, who are the general public of the state, are getting what they want and need, which is the removal of a derelict vessel, while making sure that we offer and afford the opportunity for due process to those people that are involved in the case. And I hope that answers that question.
So switching gears back to boating safety classes. This question is, and this is a very common question we get, especially from people out of state. Are boating safety classes from other states acceptable in Florida? And the short answer is yes. Florida state statute says that we will accept it as long as it meets the NASBLA requirements. NASBLA is the National Association of State Law Boating Law Administrators. Each DNR, Natural Resource Marine Patrol agency in the country has a boating law administrator that works directly with NASBLA on current issues, future issues, whatever they see coming up. So the question is yes. And then the second part of this question is, are national boating safety classes certificates accepted in Florida? For example, NASBLA. So the question is, with that, yes. Florida is 100% on board with NASBLA. NASBLA is listed in state statute. So everything that NASBLA does, certificates does related to boating safety and training that they provide to law enforcement is accepted wherever you take it in the country.